Chapter 13. Angles of Madness. From prisms wrought within the toilet grotto, I speak through angles mirrored with thoughts senescent and supreme. Oh, learn the law, my brothers of the night, the great law and the lesser law. The great law brings the balance and doth persist without mercy. The lesser law abideth as the key, and the shining trapezoid is the door. Anton Zander LaVey, Die Elektrischen Vorspiel, The Satanic Rituals. Before the Church of Satan began, LaVey's group of savants, which he called the Magic Circle, experimented with rituals exploring the realms of angles as passageways to the fourth dimension. Those first members wore a trapezoid surrounded by a bat-winged demon that could be removed to reveal the inverted pentagram /666 design beneath. In 1966, after the formation of the Church of Satan, this symbol was replaced by the now familiar Baphomet. The Magic Circle emerged as the governing body of the Church of Satan, known as the Order of the Trapezoid. See the Sixth Enochian Key, the Satanic Bible. The Order of the Trapezoid continues as the inner circle within the Church of Satan today. Red trapezoidal membership cards were issued early on, but proved too unwieldy for wallets and were redesigned sans trapezoid. In describing the requirements for a satanic altar, LaVey specifies a trapezoidal shape, 3 to 4 feet high and 5 to 6 feet long. At least 2 satanic rituals pay homage to angles: the law of the trapezoid, Die Elektrischen Vorspiel, and the ceremony of the 9 angles, while many others include passing references to haunted geometry as well. In the Satanic Bible, LaVey reveals that John Dee scried the Enochian keys in the early 1600s using a many-faceted crystal trapezohedron, and not a crystal ball as is generally believed. It was through this angled crystal that Dee perceived the 19 keys, or calls, which LaVey claims have been deliberately mistranslated through the years due to metaphysical constipation. The first blasphemous English translation of the calls, as well as the original Enochian, are laid out in the final section of the Satanic Bible. Now the crystal clears, and the angels are seen as angles, and the windows to the fourth dimension are thrown open, and to the frightened, the gates of hell. For those of us who may not immediately apprehend profound magical significance in a common geometrical form, LaVey has published several articles for our enlightenment. To begin at the beginning, a trapezoid can be described as a triangle with its top chopped off. Put a dollar bill out of your pocket and look at the backside. The stone edifice with the eye in the triangle hovering over it is a trapezoid. The shape conveys special magic wherever it is seen. Although the Egyptians may have entombed themselves in pyramids, the Aztecs and Mayans made sacrifices to their gods atop the grand stone trapezoidal temples. Every Charles Adams-style haunted house is topped with a mansard roof, a perfect trapezoid. While fairy tale castles are usually envisioned as crowned with conical spires, wicked queens have always lived in stark, angled, well-fortified monoliths. Other buildings echoing the trapezoidal shape include the Black John Hancock Building in Chicago, which now stands over LaVey's birthplace, and the brooding Ennis House in Los Angeles, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright to resemble a looming Mayan temple. Old-style coffins were trapezoidal, two-placed bottom to bottom, as is the Golden Gate Bridge, viewed from the side. Childhood research revealed to LaVey that the trapezoidal form was used continuously in the architecture of war. A 14-year-old LaVey expanded his theories on visual patterns when he discovered The Command to Look by William Mortensen. Ostensibly a guide to picture-taking, the small book forever changed the way LaVey perceived the world around him. In it, Mortensen explains composition and what makes a compelling photo or scene. He puts forth certain visual laws, which LaVey immediately applied to areas beyond photography. What Mortensen termed dominant mass coincided precisely with what LaVey was formulating about the hulking visual, and therefore magical, power of the trapezoid. Beyond that, LaVey learned other aspects of the command to look. The necessity of archetypal themes, such as sex, sentiment, or wonder, and Mortensen's is, not does, principle, which explains that true visual power is attained by timeless composition of elements than simply shooting away at movement. LaVey was so intrigued by the possibilities that he began applying Mortensen's ideas in his own drawings and paintings. One painting, for example, titled The Sentinel, shows a murky trapezoidal building far in the background, a sorcerer silhouetted in its doorway. The open tower of the house emits an unearthly blast of light into the night as a drone-like winged demon fills most of the foreground, sent out to do the sorcerer's bidding. Putting Mortensen's theories to practice well prepared LaVey for the position he was to assume with the San Francisco Police Department. Not only was he trained in effective photography, but by the time LaVey started handling 800 calls, he had already formulated possible explanations for compelling spots, haunted houses, cursed areas, and mystery spots. Perhaps the nation's first Ghostbuster, LaVey was excited to test his theories on actual haunted spots. From his carnival days, LaVey knew how contrived visual puzzles like mystery spots were, constructed to use angles and false perspectives to fool the eye and throw off people's equilibrium. Perhaps blighted houses, LaVey speculated, are caused by sloppy builders or architects who did not realize the effect of weird angles to the occupants of the building. After investigating and photographing murder and suicide sites, LaVey surmised that certain abnormal configurations can lead people already predisposed to madness to perform aberrant acts. Angles and space planes that provoke anxiety, that is, those not harmonious with the visual orientation, will engender aberrant behavior. Translate, change. Exceptions occur where a sort of reverse polarity exists in a creature. Extreme mental imbalance or perversity, or perhaps even extreme rationality and awareness. LaVey expanded the ideas to apply to businesses as well, where something is off, just enough to turn people away. Sometimes you walk into a room and there's something at an odd angle, disturbing somehow, and an offensive position that needs to be changed. That one thing that turns everything off kilter so badly you have to do something drastic about it. It's the story of blighted buildings. They just need a drastic change. I've seen buildings, often on corners, where businesses will move in maybe twice a year. They'll try everything. Nothing seems to succeed there. People would say the building is cursed. It is. Usually the angles are all wrong, thrusting outward when they should come inward to bring people in. A lot of times they can't do anything about it. They'd have to raise the building and start all over again. By 1962, LaVey had formulated the law of the trapezoid, and he explained it in a 1976 issue of The Cloven Hoof. I had ample evidence that spatial concepts were not only able to affect those who were involved in visual confrontations, but far more insidiously other parties with whom a viewer came into contact. As is any other form of contagion, family, friends, and co-workers are affected by the signals of anxiety projected by another. The most tranquil and stoical person can be drawn into a chaotic situation if his surroundings are sufficiently disturbing. Often I discovered that subtle aberrations had a more profound effect than readily recognizable and overt spatial distortions. It is often the case. One particular room of a blighted house might be identified as the mad room. Only one wall might be off vertically, but that would be enough to create an unconscious disturbance in its occupants. Whole buildings identified as haunted might prove to be infested with obtuse, untrue angles, useless nooks, or an erratic asymmetrical exterior. Perhaps one that had a crouching appearance or looked like it might have a face. Specific objects can trigger intense disturbances in a household, as well if they are of an odd shape. Furniture, picture frames, murals, appliances, jinxed automobiles can be the catalyst for dreadful acts. As far back as the late 50s, LaVey was asked by an associate to design a proposed housing development. One can only guess what kind of horrors LaVey conjured up for the people who have lived in the houses he designed. The same thing can happen naturally, LaVey found, with a peculiar rock formation, oddly sloped hillside, or inadvertently aberrant landscape. A particular setting, where angles are askew and one's equilibrium is thrown off, can be heightened by unusual natural phenomenon to a point where legends of hauntings become inevitable. Swamp gases, for instance, might produce ignis fatui, need fires, or vampire flames. Little blue flames formed by rotting wood in swamps. They are said to show where a vampire is sleeping, a suicide is buried, or where treasure is hidden, depending on which old wives' tale you believe. Such natural formations can cause beliefs that a particular place is magical, haunted, or evil. Fairy rings, cairns, standing stones as seen in parts of Great Britain, unusually deep, dark woods, clearings in woods, edges of cliffs, mountaintops, coves, caves, all these are expected settings for horror stories. At LaVey's lectures on time warps in peculiar areas, he discussed his personal research into areas like Devil's Slide, a coastside vortex just south of San Francisco, where a number of unusual fatalities have occurred. LaVey has in his possession a manuscript of an unpublishable book by a crony, fully documenting the inexplicably gory history of the area. LaVey himself admits he has fallen under the winding road spell on at least one occasion when he and Diane were traveling down the coast. It was all he could do to bring his car to a stop along the narrow shoulder. On Walpurgisnacht, a year before the church formed, a couple of LaVey's witches disregarded his warnings and their car went over the cliff. They landed on a ledge a few hundred feet down and barely survived. Another natural vortex LaVey has discussed is the Whites Hill area in Marin County north of San Francisco, which he describes as second to Devil's Slide. In a 3 or 4 mile stretch around the hill, particularly on one death curve, there have been a number of unexplained car accidents. Surviving motorists have described a feeling of being pulled off the road by some unseen force. LaVey explains this is caused by an improperly graded roadbed. Habitual travelers on the road also claim it takes an unusually long time to get where you're going. It's a commonly accepted rule that you lose about an hour no matter how fast you try to drive. Certain places attract people and creatures that are out of the ordinary, to say the least. LaVey claims that there has been some odd creatures in the Whites Hill area himself. Riding through once with Robert Barber Johnson, the Weird Tales mystery writer, they saw a 4-foot-tall vulture eating meat on the side of the road. When they got even with it, it took to the air like a small plane. Its wingspan was so large. Another time, LaVey saw a thing scuttling across the road. He described it as being the size of a large tarantula, but spiny, with beady black eyes, moving sideways like a crab. Possibly a land crab. And there was a huge undulating caterpillar-like creature, about 4 feet long, which suddenly appeared from the bushes next to the road, ambled a few feet, then disappeared back into the foliage. What is remarkable, figures LaVey, is not the mysterious identity of these creatures, but that they have a way of distractingly appearing at the critical onset of the death curve. The Land's End section of San Francisco, which LaVey had occasion to visit quite often when he was doing crime photography, consists of dangerously unstable, molten land. A young boy was walking with his girlfriend when the hillside came down and swallowed him alive. The girl contended that it happened so fast she barely had time to jump out of the way herself. The earth was quivering while rescuers searched for the body. LaVey had seen sections of the endless man-sized tunnels, which wind through the underbrush. The organic labyrinths are favorite spots for illicit and illegal activities, including the dumping of bodies. That seems most appropriate since the whole area was originally a cemetery. Human flesh is good fertilizer and seems to create real life in the very ground. Even today, the land keeps churning and slipping through, though the cause is nothing scientists seem able to analyze. Actually, says LaVey, all soil is a lot more active than we realize. As with many processes in nature, we don't notice the activity. But farmers use it to their advantage by leaving certain fields fallow for a season to allow the land time to rejuvenate itself. There are only 2 remaining tombstones to mark where the cemeteries once were, one built in an arch. Someone hung himself in the arch of the tombstone several years ago. With a disciplined blend of ruthless skepticism and magical intrigue, LaVey debunks most claims in order to winnow out anomalous phenomena that might actually exist. The few truly unexplainable phenomena, beyond the effects of the ritual chamber, he has experienced have involved these weird vortexes. His theories to explain the few apparent dematerializations he's seen involve the tendency for all molecular structures to rotate in a singular direction. When items disappear, are gone for a few days or months, then reappear in an exactly 180-degree opposite position, is it possible that they're passing temporarily into another dimension, then rotating back out again? The Dunwich horror of H.P. Lovecraft's story comes through the angles of a trapezohedron. The lurker on the threshold, the haunter in the dark, the entire Cthulhu mythos and much of Lovecraft's poetry makes references to the slavering beasts that find passage into our world through angles. Many of Robert E. Howard's poems and horror stories, The House on the Borderland by William Hope Hodgson, the supposedly apocryphal Emerald Tablet of Thoth, from which LaVey derived the text for The Electrician Vorspiel, and one of the most terrifying stories ever written, Frank Belknap's Long Hounds of Tyndalos, all refer to the flux that angels induce. Anton LaVey admits to encountering a Lovecraftian entity once on a foray he took deep into the caverns beneath Sutro Baths. The baths were the largest indoor swimming pools in the world, designed by San Francisco's eccentric mayor, Adolph Sutro, to emulate the Roman baths with several different pools filled with various health-inducing substances. Catch basins drew from the sea to pipe therapeutic waters into the 7 large pools. Climbing through a dislodged section of wainscoting of an abandoned dressing room, I explored far beyond the building's foundations, so far back I doubt if anyone had been there for decades. My flashlight revealed an expanse of muddy ground reaching beyond the beam of light into pitch darkness. It was as though I had entered a lightless amphitheater. I heard some guttural moaning noises ahead of me and smelled a terrible smell. Peering into the murk, I could barely make out a misshapen shadow moving in the darkness ahead of me. Then the rustling or flapping of what sounded like huge wings. I had this overwhelming feeling I'd better get the hell out of there. I didn't stick around to see what it was. If there are elementals we might call demons, existing independently on other dimensions, could they be attracted to such shapes as the trapezoid? Could trapezoids act as a catalyst to evoke or facilitate restless spirits or demons on other planes, creating a window in Einstein's space-time continuum? Might these demons, once summoned, feel most comfortable hidden away in some desolate area? Barely accessible coves or bottomless caverns? Could it be that Lovecraft, Long and their ilk, wrote fictionally of monsters only because such concepts would otherwise be considered unbelievable? Know ye, all who dwell in the light of professed righteousness, that others who know the keys and the angles have opened the gate, and for turning back there is not time. Thou hast been given the key, but thy minds are small and grasp not the word. Therefore, list to the sounds, O ye out there, the great bell sound of the baying of the hounds. They are gaunt and unquenched, and through the great blazing trapezoid they come, their eyes aglow with the fires of hell.